We'll start with everybody's favorite topic, the impeachment crisis. Joining me now, Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia, a member of the Judiciary Committee. Congressman, let me ask you, you on the Judiciary Committee that did the impeachment inquiries, are you certain that this was done in a matter that was above partisan posturing and partisan factors, but was to really protect the law and the Constitution of the United States?
Yes, no doubt, Reverend Allen. Thanks for having me on. Good to be with you.
Thank you for being here.
No doubt that this process of impeachment was not one that was come to lightly by the Speaker of the House. You know, as well as many others, that there's been a groundswell of growing support for impeachment throughout this year, starting with Rashida Tlaib on the day she was sworn in, January 3rd, telling the nation what she intended to do, and many people were with her. And I was one who kind of laid back. I didn't think that then or at the time of the release of the Mueller report was the time to do impeachment. But shortly before the Speaker announced that she was opening an impeachment inquiry, I decided that I thought it was in the best interest of the nation to support impeachment at that time, and that was in September. And it was in response to the bombshell announcement of the whistleblower existing and coming forward with information that showed that the president put his own interest ahead of the nation's national security interest. And it was at that time that Nancy Pelosi, myself, and others in Congress got on board the impeachment bandwagon. So it's been late, but I'll tell you, the investigation was done in a very efficient way, and it revealed the truth about what happened and compelled us to move forward with the vote, which is what we did last week.
Now, when we look at the facts that the Congress had approved $391 million to Ukraine, which was in dire needs of it in their battle with Russia, and they were an ally, Ukraine was, of the United States, which you referred to in terms of our national security at stake, and the abuse of power, and the fact the president did stop witnesses from coming forward and testifying. There's also another issue that you raised that spoke to many Americans. Here's what you said on the House floor right before the vote.
If you think I exaggerate in warning that our elections can be undermined, I'd urge you to come down to Georgia, find a black man or woman of a certain age, and they'll tell you the danger is real. And they'll tell you of brave Americans, patriots willing to risk far more than a political career, who marched and struggled and sometimes died so that we could have fair and free elections. We're not asked to possess even a fraction of their courage. We're simply called upon today to do what's right. And I'm proud to vote yes on impeachment, and with that, I yield back.
Now, what was compelling to me about your statement was we saw and heard the facts laid out, as you just reiterated here live, about the abuse of power, about obstructing Congress. But you also raised the fact that we're talking about having the interference with an election and suppressing votes that has been done in many different ways, this another one of them. Why was that important to you to bring that up as you cast your vote?
Well, it's important to understand, Reverend, that the rights of black people to vote have been under attack ever since we got that right. And we didn't get that right until 1965 with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. And ever since then, our rights to vote have been under attack. Actually, folks like Brian Kemp, who now serves as Georgia's governor, has his has his hands around the throat of the African-American electorate and Democratic voters in terms of trying to get people's names who are registered to vote, get those names off of the voting list. I mean, we've seen that just this week where 200,000 names have been deleted from the voting rolls of Georgia. But what President Trump was trying to do was actually get a foreign government to interfere in the election by announcing a investigation of his chief political rival, Joe Biden. And in that way, you got it going and coming because it's part of the same force. You've got those on the state level working to deprive us of our right to vote, and then you've got those on the national level, Donald Trump and his supporters, who are trying to sway the opinion of voters against those who they would tend to vote for based on false information. And so it's an egregious violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of the ability of people's ability to exercise their fundamental right under a democracy, which is to choose their own leaders. Yeah. And when you interfere with that right, you're striking at the heart of democracy.
Now, one of the things that struck me is as I watched the proceedings and you were there on the floor, it was a little, I won't say stunning, but certainly something we would take note of. Not any of the Republicans that were defending the president brought up his character. None of them said this is an honest man, he wouldn't do this. This is a man that has such high ethics. It was all on process. Very little stood up for the character and the kind of behavior this president would engage in according to what they feel about him personally.
Well, I tell you, what happened this week with Nancy Pelosi, a female, leading the effort with about 90 other females in the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives, along with 44 African-American legislators, 38 Latino legislators, 20 Asian-American, Asian-Pacific legislators. So you have close to, 150, 200 of a diverse part of America voting on impeachment. And you had a cast of white males, pretty much. That's what it was, bottom line. White males defending the president, willing to defend anything that he does. Why is it that we're at this point in the nation's history? It is the final, well, I won't say final vote, but it is as if the white male privilege is under assault, and they feel like they've got to accept anything from their leader to maintain that position. And so it's actually much greater than this president simply abusing his oath of office and abusing his power as president and putting our national security at risk. Is actually about trying to maintain a current system that will never, that is actually, when you look at our country and look at our children, this is a multicultural, multi-demographic society, and it's getting even more so. It won't stop. And but this is the last line of defense, and they're willing to accept anything from their leader in order to preserve it.
Yeah. Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Reverend.